And I wanted to make sure that y'all can hear me. So let me double check that I can hear myself here because it's kind of echoey in this room. Okay, cool. So again, I know, situation ain't great, but we're still going to get to the information today. If we have not met before, my name is Melissa Fryer. I am the founder, the CEO, the owner of Build a Better Bakery, which is basically myself and a couple other military spouses who came together, took our expertise to create essentially a compilation of information, a support group, a mentorship, courses, paperwork, all that kind of stuff for bakers so they can find more joy in what they're doing rather than being overwhelmed and stressed, because honestly, baking is kind of a hard gig. It's very fulfilling and people can do it for many years and still really enjoy what they do. But it can be and is often pretty overwhelming. So that's why we're here to help. And if you're looking for that kind of less overwhelmed, less stress as you're reaching those success points in your business, then we should just hang out more. Go ahead and throw your hashtag replay if you're on the replay. And if you're ever here with me live, go ahead and throw your hashtag live up so I know you're here. Now, for Build a Better Bakery, we've started doing themes for the month, and the theme for July is Bake It Like a Pro. So although we normally talk about business stuff, I still love to talk about baking. So you can absolutely ask baking questions in the group if you like. Some of us know what we're doing. We've been doing this for a while. We're seasoned bakers. Some of us are just figuring it out step by step. Some of us have literally baked like 2 things and we're obsessed and we want to learn more. So we're at all different levels here in the group. And today I want to chat about 3 important advanced aspects that I want you to check if you're baking a recipe and it doesn't turn out right. Flops, burns, spreads, whatever it is, right? Like if a recipe is just not right. We covered 3 beginner aspects to check last week, and we're going to do 3 advanced this week. So if you want to watch last week's video, you can see it on YouTube in the featured posts here in the group. You can also get it in the email update I'll send out a little bit later with both of these links in it. So if you're on the email list, you'll get that. Either way, we covered ingredients, oven temperature, and pans in that last video. Okay, if you want to stay in the know about these lives here in the group when they're actually happening, sometimes we do giveaways, freebies, different things that happen within about 24 hours of the live being posted, or for those that actually attend live, you can check the events in the group. I post a couple days before what it's going to be about. You can send me a friend request to get an invite directly to your Facebook account. You can hang out on the email list for replays or check YouTube for replays. But right now I'm going live every Thursday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So that might change in the future when I'm dealing with the homeschool situation. It's going to come up soon. But right now it's 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So you can see me here every week, or a special post will happen at that time for you. Okay. Hey, Cindy. Hey, Ross. Okay. So we're going to hop in with number 1. And again, these are going to be 3 advanced tips for you to check when you're baking an item that isn't working out. The first is the recipe made for your altitude? Altitude's not necessarily something you think about when you're a beginner baker. Maybe you hadn't really considered how altitude could affect what you're doing. The effects of a higher altitude versus sea level is that usually they will result in a faster expansion or a rising process for your product, a slower cook time, and also losing more moisture or needing more moisture to create a certain texture, which means there might be some adjustment to your bake time, the temperature you're using, even the amount of liquid that's in the recipe itself. So you might be wondering, am I high elevation? You're considered high elevation in the baking world if you're at 3,500 feet or more, aroundish, or above sea level. So check the elevation of where you're living or where you're baking, and see if you might need to adjust a recipe that's been created by a person who's maybe living closer to or at sea level and hasn't really, given you an altitude tweak for wherever you're at. So check that, and you might see your recipes rising, and you may see recipes that rise and fall, as in your leavening is reaching its peak and then falling because there's too much of it in there, right? It's rising too fast. You might see spreading when it's not meant to spread. You might see your product drying out more quickly than normal, or even bread that's overproofing. These are all things that can happen with higher altitude using recipes for low altitude. Due to each type of item and recipe being unique, it's hard to give like one, tried and true way to change a recipe for high altitude. So I do suggest looking online for altitude adjusted recipe for whatever you're making. Maybe if it's not the one you want to use, at least look at it to compare it to the one you have and see if you can shift around ingredients or procedure to make the one you have closer to that altitude recipe. Number 2, is the recipe built with the universal formula in mind for that specific item? Truth is, some recipes that we find online these days are created by people who don't know much about baking really. And these are usually found on food blogs that get paid per article. People are writing them really fast. They're regurgitating information. They might even be using photos of products that they didn't actually make. We never really know. So they're not really getting paid for the recipe to work in those situations. It's more so just to create the content. Now, with this in mind, first, always just try to stick with a trusted source for good recipes. That could be like, I like the Preppy Baker. I like Sugar Geek. There's a few others. I can't think of them right now, but whenever I go online, I'll see their name and I'll think, okay, yeah, like I've made some of their recipes. I think they're good. Or just look at their popularity. You can ask on some of your favorite, even in this group or some of your other groups that are including bakers that you know, like, and trust. Hey, what's your favorite go-to online source for recipes? What's your favorite recipe book? Any of those questions. And you'll start to see patterns of bakers who people seem to trust more. So definitely go with those people first. And then second, you can eyeball the recipe and see if it's following the standard rules, right? There are standard rules for different items like cakes, breads, etc. Ratios or things you can look for as far as building just a standard recipe for those types of products. Many large categories of baked items have that set of formulas, rules, percentages printed out somewhere for you to grab and look at and become familiar with each item that you're going to be making regularly. So as an example, to give you a feel for what I'm talking about, as you're looking like at recipes in the wild, let's say we're looking at pound cakes. So a standard formula to start with for a pound cake, very simple, right? 1 pound flour, 1 pound butter, 1 pound sugar, 1 egg. It's like seriously super direct. That might not be the best tasting cake, but that is the formula that you can start with. And there are percentages in which you can push and pull those numbers based on altitude and the type of product that you want to end up with before that recipe really starts to fall apart. So it's kind of like the baseline. So let's say you're looking at recipes online and this person says, this is the best pound cake. Here's the recipe, 2 pounds flour and 1 of everything else. So immediately you think to yourself, hey, that doesn't really match up with the baseline. That's like way too much flour. And you'll start to see that and be able to pick those things out as you get more comfortable with the universal understanding of the base formulas for the products that you're trying to create. All right, moving on to number 3. Did you follow the procedure exactly as stated? This is probably thinking years and years back when I first started baking. This was the hardest thing for me because I'm kind of like a Wild West cook, right? I don't follow a lot of recipes. I have basic understanding of cooking and I can, replace this, change that, just look through the fridge and make something, that kind of thing. And that is just not what baking is. And I really had to understand that I needed to do those two things differently because baking is really chemistry. It's not cooking, it's chemistry from my perspective. The closer you can get to doing something exactly correct, the better your bakes are going to be. That's just how it is. So you can definitely mess around with flavorings here and there, maybe a few spices, things that don't really affect the full base way that all of the ingredients are interacting. But everything else needs to pretty much be on the nose every time if you want the same product every time. Just a little tip here, I moved to weighing ingredients. If you haven't done that already, instead of just measuring them out, I really suggest it. It is quite beneficial for your end product, especially if you're doing this professionally. you want to have the same thing every time if you can, right? So weighing over measuring, great level up if you're looking to do that. And if you need links to any of those little scales, I can definitely let you know the one I use. And then there's also one that's more for like a large commercial kitchen. I can show you that one too. All right, so if you're treating baking like cooking, so if it's a dash of this, whatever on that, different ingredient here, that may actually be why you can't get the results you want. So again, try to do it to a T and you'll start seeing, using a good recipe, doing it to a T for the right altitude, you'll start seeing your bakes turn out better. And just as a quick example, if you're making those substitutions that you think really don't affect anything, like if a recipe is calling for cake flour and you use all-purpose, that can absolutely affect the crumb of the product, the density of the product, et cetera. So even that small of a difference can change what you end up with at the end. Or if it's telling you to cream the butter and you don't really do it all the way, or you're not sure what it is, so you just skip that step, that's going to create a dense product. The creaming adds air and fluffiness to the batter. So that could be an issue. Or if the recipe tells you to chill something for like 6 to 8 hours, that's doing things inside of the dough. It's creating more gluten strands, it's resting the dough, it's chilling the butter or the oil, it's chilling it back to a colder temperature to start the baking process at rather than something warm. So that can lead to spreading, thin bakes, whatever, right? So there's a reason people are telling you to do these little steps in a recipe, and you can make it your own as you get better at it, but I want you to try to hit it on the nail with their instructions first, and then you can start playing with it and changing it to be easier for you if you need to later. All right, so real short today to recap, if you have checked the oven temperature, you've leveled the you've leveled the oven, you have made sure the temperature is correct a couple times in a row, cool. If you check the ingredients and the leavening agents are efficiently working, cool. If you're using quality pans that are light in color and a thicker metal, good. And if it still isn't right, you're going to check the altitude of that recipe and adjust as needed. You're going to balance your recipe if it's a little bit off and you look at the main formula for the product and you realize there needs to be a little bit of a change. Or then you're going to check the procedure and make sure you're doing everything to a T. Those are the 6 things that I would check. Now, if at that point you are still not able to work this recipe out, it is still not doing what you want, there might be a very unique factor at play that it would be hard to pick out. So feel free to post in the group, post a photo of what you're trying to do, post a photo of what you did, ask questions about it, and we will all work together as a group to help you figure it out, okay? So as I mentioned before at the beginning of the live here, we're still getting settled in our Texas home. So I'm really still focusing a lot on what's going on here, trying to figure things out. I'm not working as much as I normally would. But I will say, as we're moving closer to the new year, I'm going to be working on some new things. So you're going to see some workshops. I know you guys were asking about more mini workshops. And you can definitely let me know what topics you're interested in working on over that 1-hour workshop. I usually send like a printable with that or some kind of notes, something extra to go along with the hour. Just let me know in the group if you have an ask for a mini workshop, or you can send me a DM or an email, and then I'll get a feel for what everyone's in need of right now. You can also expect to see a cottage to commercial course. This is something that has been in the works for a while. I need to get it finished, but I want to have that up and available because many of you are wanting to move to commercial, and it can be very scary. And there's a lot of questions of like chicken and egg, what should I do first? So I want to have that course up available for all of you that want to either learn more about it, just learn about it, or take that step into moving commercial. And I'm also going to be setting up a Patreon opportunity, which what I'm hoping to make this into would be a monthly low-cost mentorship option, because I know some of you have looked at the Elite Mentorship Program, and because it does include so much, the price point's higher. But I know some of you either aren't ready to go there or you need a little bit of help before you would need all of that information anyway. So I'm going to be hopefully working up a Patreon opportunity that can include that for you guys too. I thought that'd be fun. Okay, So tell me in the chat, which of the 3 advanced tips do you think is most useful? If you watch the whole thing, let me know. Was it altitude, procedure, or recipe formulation? Let me know which one you think is the most useful to you. Okay, that's it today. I'll see you guys next week. And I think we might be even onto a new topic or one more in this session. I don't remember, but I'll post in a few days about what we're going to chat about, and I will see you later. See you, bye.